Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Middle of the Pack Racing League GT4 Championship for 2022, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. Today, we mark the return of the series as it continues its way into its final stage. That's right, we're back today for round number 7 of the 9 rounds, and we are kicking off the Endurances stage as of today after the second mid-season break. It was the case, of course, we didn't go racing last week. We've had a 2-week break, and now we are back once again to kick it all off and really head the series towards its conclusion. And for our schedule for tonight, times in British Summer Time, that's BST or UTC +1, we have the following. In approximately 14 minutes or so time, we'll begin underway with the 15-minute qualifying session to determine our grid order for the purposes of today's only race, and immediately after qualifying, our drivers will be lining up and getting ready to go racing at 6:30 this evening for what will be the sprint race, the 20-minute race, which will have no mandatory pit stop. It's the case the only strategy is to get to the front of the pack and lead your way to the finish. Whether you're in the Pro or the AM class, you want to be at the head of your class, and if you can pick up an extra point for the fastest lap as well, indeed, that could bode very well as this championship campaign continues, and it is the case now all the points are becoming increasingly precious. Now, when we are bringing the race in action here at Bathurst in Australia, I should point out it is the case that the race itself took place on Wednesday the 20th of July, so earlier this week, and we're bringing you all the race in action as a post-round broadcast. So whilst it's the case the race is not live, it is the case that I, as your commentator, do not know who finished first. Indeed, I don't know how qualifying goes. I don't know anything about what happens in the races, so therefore it's all completely raw to me, and therefore we'll be bringing it to you as if it's a completely raw live experience. And for those of you tuning in who participated in this race, of course, try to avoid any key spoilers there in the chat, whether it's on YouTube or Twitch you're tuning in. It is the case we would appreciate that. Speaking of being able to tune in, you can tune in via TX141 on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/TX141. Alternatively, TX141TX or Paul Walsh on YouTube. And who is Paul Walsh? Well, that's I, your commentator and host. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Brit of the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And I'm bringing you all your racing action tonight, and indeed for the whole season here of the GT4 Championship. But as we do look to the season ahead, it is the case, we can see here, we've already completed 6 rounds. Last time out, it was the case all the way back at the start of July. Our drivers made their way around the Daytona road course and completed the second of the 3 feature race rounds. And of course, our final one will be round number 9, which takes place at the Nordschleife loop of the Nürburgring, and that is all the way at the start of August. But before we can get there today, it is, of course, Mount Panorama, the racing having taken place on the 20th of July. Next week, we'll be heading to Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium, and then we'll be making our way to Germany for the Nürburgring circuit to bring the curtain down. But preceding all this, if we went all the way back to the end of May, when we kicked the season off for the F1 stage, it was the case we started off in Brazil, Interlagos. We then made our way to Austria for the Red Bull Ring, and Suzuka circuit being our third round. And the F1 stage involving 3 circuits which are synonymous with Formula 1. It is the case when you think Formula 1, those are the 3 circuits you typically think of in terms of Formula 1 racing action. And then we had a week's break, and then we made our way to the United States of America. And indeed, the Americas stage, as it says on the tin, the circuits were celebrating American motorsporting history, starting off at Road America, and then we made our way, of course, to the rebirth or the revival place of road race in the United States after the Second World War, which was Watkins Glen for round number 5 in the New York State, and then, of course, last time at Daytona. We're at stage number 3, the Endurances stage. Why is it called the Endurances stage? Well, if you look at the 3 circuits, Mount Panorama, Spa-Francorchamps, and the Nürburgring, you may be thinking right now that those are the circuits where we typically see events such as the 24 hours of Circuit X, and you would be correct. It is the case that we normally do each year have the 24 hours of the Nürburgring Nordschleife. We do also have, and quite recently on iRacing, we've had the official 24 hours of Spa-Francorchamps, albeit a lot of grass cutting and trimming there, and well, that is going to be penalised next week, I can assure you, if our drivers are found guilty of that. And we also do see in the real world that Spa-Francorchamps does act as a major endurance circuit where it's 12 or 24 hours. And let's not forget Mount Panorama, our venue for today, where you typically see 6-hour plus racing in GT3 class cars. And indeed, historically, Bentley going very well there, dating back in 2018, if I remember correctly, or 2019, they did have a stellar performance. But we're celebrating endurance racing over the final 3 rounds, and that's what the endurance stage is all about. But as we look from the calendar to the standings going into tonight, it is the case that after 6 rounds, we see in the Pro Drivers' Championship, John Lauzon leads on 118 points, 3 clear of Edwin Offre there, and then Jerome Bajulaz is a further 8 points behind. And this top three being very close, and indeed the results have ebbed and flowed between them. John Lauzon appearing to be the fastest of the three drivers in terms of one-lap pace and also in terms of outright pace, but he's had a lot of misfortune, and that misfortune seems to be going away. Whereas Edwin Offred, the challenger in P2 there, has all been about consistency and learning and building the pace as the season has gone on. And then Jerome Bajula is really the dark sheep, if you will, or the black horse, however you want to phrase it. It is the case that Jerome Bajula is that driver who from the very outset, picking the Porsche Cayman 718 GT4, where there was a concern as to how strong that car would be, particularly on circuits with a lot of power sections and straights, and the America stage was really focused about that, but the power technique and also the straights, and we saw Bajules go very well, and keep your eyes on him, do not count him out. It is the case that if he does well over these last 3 rounds, we can imagine he could steal this championship away, and he's not that in third by coincidence. Outside the top 3, meanwhile, we have Tanner Dibble, who moved up to P4 after that superb result last time out at Daytona, now 4 points clear of Austin Farr and John Wilding, who are joint P5, and then we have Jordan Butler P7 on 61 points, and then Sam Van Olst and Henry Morse, and then Rocker above complete the top 10, followed by Jan Sauber, who made his debut quite recently, and Sauber on 17 points there. The only driver unranked being Daniel Downing, who's yet to take part in a single round of the championship. Meanwhile, on the instant count scoring, it is the case we focus on our drivers with 5 or 6 races completed, because they have to have completed at least all but one of the races to be eligible for the instant count point championship. It is the case there. We can see we only have 3 drivers eligible, and that is our top 3. And right now, Edwin Offray there on 31 instant points. He is the best part of 14 ahead of John Lauzon, and Jerome Bajules really has been on the receiving end, or indeed the delivering end of instants, depending on your perspective and what exactly happened and when. And it is the case that Bajules now will really have to try and rein in those instant points if he wants to have any chance of winning that instant count championship. But then we do look to our AM Drivers' Championship overall, and we can see that Justin Bragg on 126 points continues to lead the way after 6 rounds. The best part of 27 points clear of Lee Porter, who is only 1 point ahead of Fernando Takahashi, and in return, Mark Senegal on 94 points is not too far behind. And you have to imagine that right now, from P2 to P4, from Porter to Senegal with Takahashi in between, the story will be whether those 3 can avoid fighting one another to reel in Justin Bragg, or whether Justin Bragg will be given the remit to run away. He really has been the favourite since the season opener, albeit at one point Takahashi was leading the championship based on consistency, but it has been the state that Justin Bragg has really brought that consistency to life in order to match Takahashi, and now Justin Bragg does seem to be that unstoppable force, but can anybody curb his momentum? Meanwhile, in P5, Jermaine Warren really the best of the rest there, 7 points clear of Kenny B. Smith, and we have Rodney Velka, Duncan Moraes, Stefan Chalavu, and Blake Phillips completing the top 10 there, albeit Roger Ganesh also on 21 points, so Blake Phillips and Roger Ganesh both join in that P10 position. And then outside of the top 10, but not to be forgotten about Albert Brand and Craig Parks, and we see Antonin Deo and Dale Coate, not having taken part so far, have no points on the board. Meanwhile, in the Instant Count Championship, we can see, looking at our drivers with 5 or 6 races completed, of which we've got quite a few here in the AM class, it's really hotting up. It is a situation whereby we do have Kenny B. Smith currently standing on 6 instant points, a significantly low amount compared to his peers, although Fernando Takahashi not too far behind. But meanwhile, at the opposite end of the spectrum, we can see it is the case that we do have on 35 there Rodney Velka and Mark Senegal on 48, the highest of our AMs, and that is going to be a concern for him if he wants to try and win in the instant point count championship. Indeed, quite the goal between our leading driver there of Kenny B. Smith and our last driver there of Mark Senegal, and that gap could get wider tonight. Meanwhile, in the Team Championship, whilst there's no prizes up for grabs here, we do like to keep an informal Teams Championship. It's middle of the pack Racing, who is leading on 264 points and almost now 40 points clear of Blue Flag Motorsports, who in turn have a sizable advantage over DNA Racing. DNA Racing 178 points in a bit of no man's land, trying to close the gap to Blue Flag Motorsports, whilst at the same time having Goldwing Motorsports keeping close eyes on them. And then we have Ascension Racing and Sunday GT Turtles, both P5 on 115 points. Delta Motorsports and Motors Racing complete the standings there, 22 points and 14 points respectively. But now we must come to our Cup Championship standings from the Americas stage to wrap up the story from last time, because we couldn't bring you those results due to outstanding stewarding decisions. But it is the case that in the Pro class we can see Tanner Dibble in the end took the championship crown with 69 points to John Lauzon's 67 points. The two drivers very close between the pair of them all the way through the Americas stage, but in the end Tanner Dibble's run of fortune and also consistently improving pace race, gave him the edge over John Lauzon come the finish, and Ed went off there completing the top 3 on 58 points. 6 kilo Jerome Bajulas with John Wilding, Jordan Butler and Jan Sauber completing the standings there, and Austin Farr, Daniel Downing, Henry Morse, Rocco Ravath and Sam Van Olsen not taking part in the America stage. Meanwhile, in the AM Drivers' Championship before what is the America stage, it is the case that Justin Braggan there taking 80 points and therefore securing the crown for the stage, compared to Lee Porter by a margin of 28 points. Indeed, quite the astounding margin, it has to be said. And then Kenny B. Smith not too far behind in P3 on 50, and Mark Senegal close behind. That goes to show you how close the chasing pack is with regards to the Drivers' Championship. From Lee Porter all the way down to Fernando Takahashi, only 10 points separating P2 through to P5, and we're expecting plenty of sparks between the AMs again going into the endurance stage. Stefan Schellefeuer 32 points, one ahead of Rodney Felker, and then Jermaine Warren, Blake Phillips and Albert Brown completing the stage standings there, with Antonin Doe, Craig Parks, Dal Cote, Duncan Rays and Roger Ganesh not taking part. And that means we are happy to announce that our America stage winners are in the Pro class the number 69 driver of Tanner Dibble, and in the AM class the number 271 driver of Justin Braggan. And I believe they will at the end of the season, if they haven't already, be receiving the monetary prize award of what is $5 United States for taking the crowns within the America stage. Congratulations to them, but of course now that all eyes and all pressure will be on them in the fact, can they make it another stage win come the end of the endurances stage? And also do keep in mind, particularly with Justin Braggan, the leader of the AM Drivers' Championship overall, can he bring home the championship overall? And could we even potentially see in the Pro class Tanner Dibble have a late surge of form and get himself up into that battle for the Pro Championship lead overall come the finish? Well, we'll have to wait and see. But in terms of where we all kick off the endurance stage tonight, of course, the Mount Panorama circuit, located at Bathurst in the area of New South Wales in Australia. This circuit, well, it's either loved or feared, depending on your perspective as a racing driver. It is the case, as we can see from the image provided to us by simracingwiki.com. This is a circuit that consists of 23 corners, and they are absolutely brutal. It is the case that our drivers will start off on the start-finish straight, which is pretty straightforward, and in turn number 1, Hell Corner, precedes one of the long straights on this circuit, leading all the way up the hill towards the mountain and in the run to Griffith Bend at turn number 2. From that point onwards, our drivers will go uphill still, all the way up into the cutting of turns 3 and 4, and then the circuit will tighten as we go from what are open straights to very tight and narrow running sections which go over the mountain. It is the case that from the cutting onwards, the circuit really only becomes one wide, and only when they exit out at turn number 18 at Forest Elbow do we see the circuit open up once again to present overtaking opportunities. It's not to say overtaking is impossible on the mountain. It is possible, but it requires a lot of courage and also to know exactly where to place the car at the right time to get the job done. And of course, as our drivers make their way over the mountain, it will be the case they have Philomene Park at turn number 10, the run through Skyline into the dipper of turns 11 through to 14, and we have that run into Forest Elbow, the downhill hairpin at turn number 18, preceded by the left into right section of turns 16 and 17, where cars can become quickly unsettled. We then have the run all the way down the back straight, the longest straight here at the circuit, downhill out to Forest Elbow and down onto the chase, or the Conrod straight as it's initially known, and then it is the chase going into the chicane from turns 20 through to 21 and 22, the chase chicane at 21 and 22, where we will see some major overtaking opportunities, and then Murray's Corner, the final corner, turn number 23, sees the lap complete, and our drivers will start it all over again. Well, as for our rules for tonight, in terms of the setup, this is a fixed setup series, of course, and the iRacing baseline setup applies to all of our drives. The only thing they're allowed to change, of course, is the brake bias on the car. Car fuel loads have been restricted to 50% for this round. In qualifying, the session is broken into 2 equal halves. We'll see our AMs go out first, and the second half will be for our pro drivers. And in the sprint race tonight, the race will start into a manual double fold rolling start, with the formation being held up to the start-finish line, after which our drivers may go racing. Each driver will have one fast repair available, and we may expect some to make use of it given the high tendency for crashes at Bathurst, and a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 25 or more instant points. Well, that's enough rules and regulations. We head to our live pictures here, and it is the case that we do see making their way around in the final minute of this practice session here. We have got Tanner Dibble right now, of course, our America Stage Pro winner. And as he makes his way around for DNA Racing there in the Mercedes AMG, rolling his way down for a left-hander, looking very compact right now is Dibble, and what can he do today? Can he continue that momentum from last time out and really now start to make his way into the history books of this series, or will it be the case that some of his pro rivals will be able to put that pressure on him? Of course, Jordan Butler here, who we can see behind from DNA Racing as well, as they make their way down into Forest Elbow, the number 72 driver here in the McLaren 570S. It has been the case that Butler has had a bit of a mixed run of form, particularly in the American stage, but can he start to arrest that form and bring it under control? And well, all of our drivers are now required to make their way to the pit lane. Indeed, qualifying is about to commence, and we'll see our AMs make their way out on first. And as we are waiting for our drivers to head out onto the circuit, we look to our chats and we say hello to Fernando Takahashi there in the YouTube chat. I do hope you're doing well, Fernando, and you're having a great weekend. But we are just waiting for all of our drivers to start making their way out. And when I say all of our drivers, I do mean, of course, what is our AM drivers here. And I believe we already have Stefan Chalafoun making their way up the run towards Griffith Bend. Indeed, here is Chalafoun, the 219 car, and charging on up the hill in the McLaren. Now, what is needed here for a strong qualifying lap? Well, it is the case you really do have to be fully committed to the lap. There is no reward for playing it safe here in qualifying at Bathurst, and we could say that about all qualifying sessions, to be fair, in terms of there's no reward for playing it safe, but really here is the case you're either in the wall or you're not in the wall over the mountain section, and that is where all the time is won or lost, is over the mountain. So from the cutting onwards, as we show who's making their way over the mountain right now, this is where you have to be as close as possible to the walls when you're going through corner apex and also on corner exit. And we may hear a bump or scrape against the walls as well, and that'll go to show you how hard the drivers are pushing. As we do look to Glenn Bratton here in the McLaren 570S, and it is the case Glenn Bratton joining us as this round in the series, and we do welcome Glenn, and in this case he makes his way through the cutting. We look forward to seeing how he gets on in was the number 6 machine as he rolls his way up through the right hander there, going up through turns at 5 and 6, and well, building up a bit of pace right now, and also trying to get some tyre temperature. Because whilst it is quite hot in Australia, it is a case, of course, what if it been the summer where I'm based in, say, the United Kingdom? It's technically the Australian winter right now, so oddly enough, it will be cooler track temperatures compared to their summer, which will be on the winter side of the United Kingdom, and therefore it may be a little bit of a saviour here today, or could it be the case that it still catches our drivers out with it being still quite warm as they make their way on around? Well, we do look from Glenn Bratton to what is Justin Braggan here, the last of our AMs to make their way out of the pit lane and onto their initial warm-up lap here for qualifying. And given the fact our drivers only have 7.5 minutes in their respective session, we're not expecting too many laps here, a maximum of 3. And right now, with Braggan leaving it very late, he may only have 2 flying laps compared to some of our peers here as they make their way on through. But speaking of making their way on through, we do look to Stefan Chalafoun as the McLaren driver makes his way into the final corner and onto the first flying lap of this qualifying section. And we ride on board here, and Chalafoun gives us a lap of Bathurst. It's making his way across the timeline and breaking into Hill Corner turn number 1. Looking for that 50-metre board and breaking at about 75 metres, coming down the gearbox and coming out of the corner here. Very nicely done. Not tapping the apex curve for the simple reason those apex curves at turns 1 and 23 very high, and even at turn 2 we'll see, and they won't settle the car. So you want to be as close as possible to them but not run over them, and now making his way up the hill towards Griffith Bend. Now Griffith Bend being an uphill braking zone, he'll brake as late as possible. He'll look for the 100-metre board on the left-hand side and brake there, and as he does, coming down the gearbox to third gear, keeping it nice and tight, getting on the pound nice and early. At the camber of the corner, giving our drivers the confidence to push, and now in the final uphill run into the cutting, lifted off the throttle through turn number 3 and then stamping on the brakes immediately for the cutting at 4. And as he comes on through here, now getting on the pound, pulling the car to left to go through turns 5 and 6, the double right here, where you want the car to stay on the outside for the purpose of the 6, that way you can straight line through the combination of 6 into 7, the left-hander of 7, and now the triple left-hander of turn number 8, then turn number 9, lifting here for turn number 9 to avoid attacking the apex curve too high. And as he heads into turn 10, into Philly Park here, a nice entry. As you drop down, you have to turn in immediately for the apex to avoid the car understeering wide. Now over Skyline Bend, through turn number 11 and dropping down through turn number 12, trail braking all the way through 13 and into the dipper at turn number 14. Now missing the apex a little bit there, and that will cost him about a 10 as he runs his way through 15, 16 and now 17. The right-hander, we have to get on the brakes immediately after clearing the right-hander to brake for Forest Elbow because it's a downhill braking zone, and now it's the charge all the way down Conrod up towards the chase chicane. through the kink of 19, flat out here, and this is where getting on the power as soon as possible, getting the car rotated out of Forest Elbow is so critical. It can make a difference of up to 5 miles an hour come the end of this straight, and as he makes his way underneath the billboard there and down towards where's the chase chicane through the right-hand kink of turn number 20, here, flat out, fully committed, bringing the car to the right and braking at 150 metres from the apex of turn 21 as he comes on through, taking a bit of apex curve there to rotate the car. Well, going through the right hand of 22, completely flat out, and now in to the final corner here, down into Murray's Bend, braking at about 70 metres once more, and as he rolls his way through here, making sure not to clip the apex curve there until the very last bit, which is slightly sloped off, and that is a lap from Stefan Chalafoux in the McLaren 570S. A very nice lap, a 2:18.314. Well, we expected that to be the fastest lap in this session, potentially not, but still a very smooth lap, and that goes to show you what is needed in order to do well at Bathurst. But then I say that, and Jermaine Warren, well, it is the case of 2:18.5, so 2 tenths exactly off of Chalafoux right now, but we've still got more lap times to come on in here. And which cars are we expecting to do very well? Well, it's going to be an interesting mix here. We are expecting the power cars, so particularly the Aston Martins and the Mercedes, to be the stronger cars here, for the simple reason we have 2 very long straights, and particularly having a lot of torque in the low RPM bands going to do well for the uphill runs. But it is the case that at the same time a handling car can do well over the mountain, but then they've got to try and find their way on through. So this is likely to be, and it is typically seen as a power circuit, so we are expecting the Mercedes and the Astons to be the stronger here, as we see on the time tower. Fernando Takahashi set a 2:21.155, and meanwhile Glenn Bratton going a little slow there as he makes way out the final corner, a bit unsettled, and Justin Brain takes a provisional pole by 1.7 seconds. My goodness, that is absolutely monstrous, and I think Justin Bragan here definitely laying down a marker. I mean, there's going to be quite a bit of rubber on the circuit already as they've done their first flying laps, they go on to a second, but Bragan in that Mercedes AMG, he is not pulling any punches since the resumption. It is the case that he is going all in here. I think he really wants to get the championship wrapped up before the final round if he can, and on top of that he wants to go for that endurance stage crown as well in the AM class as he makes his way through Griffith Bend there. But as he comes on through, remembering of course that in qualifying it's all about nailing that nap, I should say, you don't want to be falling asleep, nailing that lap, and meanwhile in the case of the race it's about being fast but also being consistent here, and well, a lack of consistency, get it wrong at one corner and a whack to the wall and it could all end in tears. And well, we see Jermaine Warren here making his way down Conrod and in towards the chase, and the Aston Martin driver right now 2 tenths off a P2, which is in the hands of Stefan Chalafoux, who is just a bit further up the road, making their way down towards the final corner. And as the Aston Martin driver heads to the final set of corners here, it'll be the case, will he be able to get one more flying lap in after this one? Well, Chalafoux will definitely get another lap in, and I think it's going to be the case that Warren may just creep across the line with about 10 seconds to spare. It is going to be close, but otherwise Takahashi, Bratton and also Bragan will not get an additional lap, and in fact we can see Warren is going to get a 3rd flying lap here, as is Chalafoux. Chalafoux did not improve. Warren improves to a 2:17.699, so he'll get one more attempt at this. Meanwhile, Takahashi and the light behind him will not, as we look here to Fernando Takahashi heading down into the chase and making the way on down with that wonderful V8 beast of an engine under the front of that Mercedes. And as he rolls his way through the left into right here, it is the case the number 223 driver definitely trying to nail it. And in terms of his sector times right now, I can tell you that the midpoint lap over the mountain, Takahashi improved significantly, but elsewhere on the straights hasn't improved too much. But to be fair, finding improvement on the straights isn't too significant, apart from if the driver gets what is Forest Elbow roll, and you can see that Takahashi improves quite noticeably to a 2:17.682, just bipping Jermaine Warren to P2 by what is 16 thousandths of a second. But Warren has one more lap and therefore he has an advantage. Meanwhile, we do look to Justin Bragan, who's crossed the line. A 2:16.620 was his initial lap set, and he was not able to improve a 16.623, but I think Bragan will be happy to have taken that pole position. And well, I think Bratton coming across the line there at 2:33.5 in the end. Glenn Bratton just not there on the pace in this qualifying session, but you never know, he may be a bit more of a race pace driver rather than a one-lap magic driver. As he makes his way now up the hill, and he'll be coming into the pits at the end of this one. We do look to our pros who are making their way on around, and we can see Edwin Offred, the first, well, not one of our first pros out, but definitely a bit further back in the group. In fact, the penultimate pro driver in their pack, and it is the case that Jordan Butler is a little bit ahead. In fact, he's at the tip of the spear, and then Jerome Bajulaz is behind them all at the back. And as we look here to Jordan Butler making his way out to the dipper and into Forest Elbow, the McLaren driver, well, it is the case we do know that Butler very fast at these circuits, which require you to be really confident in your craft and whatnot. And well, it did go a bit wrong earlier in the season for Bratton, not necessarily of his own doing, but he'll be hoping here today that he can carry some momentum forward. As meanwhile, we do look from him to John Lauzon, a fellow McLaren driver here, and behind, or literally as he makes his way past them, the DNA Racing drivers there of Tanner Dibble and John Wilding swapping places as Stefan Chalafou sets P2, a 2:17.678 in the AM class there on his final flying lap, and Jermaine Warren into the pit. So Chalafou does still weigh P2 in the AM class at the finish, and that is absolutely brilliant for Chalafou, and that is going to, I think, upset Takahashi a little bit. I thought he'd got it done, but in the end they were separated by 4 thousandths, and it is now a completely pro track in terms of who's out there on circuit. And we look to Edwin Offred here, who makes his way, he drifts his way through the final corner. That's going to be a compromised start to his lap, but meanwhile Tanner Dibble here, who we do ride on board with, he takes us around for a pro lap in the Mercedes AMG as he heads across the timeline. So as he makes his way into turn 1, again braking around 70 metres there, trying to brake as late as possible, clutching over the apex curve and on the exit curve as well. And the Mercedes being a bit of an outlier here in the fact it's a very heavy car, and it is made to go over these curves more aggressively compared to its peers. And as he heads up the hill now, this is where the Mercedes straight line speed prowess will really be felt in the charge up towards turn number 2 into Griffith Bend. But as he breaks his way into the corner here, the thing that he'll have to worry about is the fact that he will have a little bit of an understeer in the car when he gets on pan. You can see that there. Look how close he got to the outside wall, but just right on the limit. And as Dibble rolls his way in to the cutting here, using the full width of the circuit to get the width to turn through turn number 4. But again, note how that Mercedes, it's not able to come across the circuit as rapidly. He has to focus on taking tighter entry lines into the apexes or costing himself some speed. As he runs through turn 6 and 7, they're very close to one both apexes. Now for the triple left header of turns 8 through to 10, and as he heads through turn number 9, nicely done there. Not quite as much width used on exit compared to others. I think setting himself up more for the Filming Park at turn 10. He does so, and now braking over the crest into Skyline. Trail braking his way down through 12 into 13, and as he rolls his way through the right into the dipper, the left-hander of 14. It is the case, hooked up very nicely, and the Mercedes are looking very stable as he heads his way into turn number 17 here, coming off the throttle, bringing the brakes on and bringing the car all the way down nice and tight to the apex wall there, so he can get on the power nice and early and let the car charge out to the outside. And that's exactly what you want to do, so close to the walls, but at the end of the day never graze them or cost himself any speed. And now as he charges his way all the way down Gomrod here, and again an uphill run on the straight, the Mercedes will enjoy this, as will the Aston Martin underneath the billboard and now down into the chase chicane. And as he heads his way on down here into the braking zone, braking around that 150 metre board and bringing the car all the way down to second gear, using that downshift to second to rotate the rear of the car on turn into the apex of 21. And as he comes out to 22, now looking to the final corner here. It's been a good lap so far. Will he hook it up and nail it perfectly? Braking for Murray's Bend, and as he comes on out here, he'll head to the line. And what will it be? For Dibble, it will be provisional pole, but John Wilding goes faster. His teammate was in the draft behind, and the two of them are separated by a tenth of a second. Jordan Butler, meanwhile, P3, followed by Jerome Pajula's P4, Edwin Offred P5, and John Lauzon on a very dismal lap. I think it went very wrong for him, all the way down in P10 overall. Only 11 drivers taken to the circuit today, but to be fair, whilst we may not have the quantity of drivers that we typically see, we definitely do have the quality of drivers here, and they are making themselves known as they make their way on around here on what will be their, I believe, looking at our timing boards, it is going to be their final qualifying lap here for our pros as they make their way around. But right now, John Wilding, the fastest of all of them, and definitely delivering as they flow their way up into the cutting once again. But of course, Dibble and Wilding working together, and Wilding being the rear driver of these two, and therefore he's gaining the slipstream toe down the straight, and that will help him gain a tenth or two in the overall run. But of course, the downside of it is he has to deal with that dirty air coming off the front of his teammate in the run and through the corners, particularly over the mountain, and therefore it will cost him a bit of time. So it's a bit of a balancing act, but they feel as though they've got more to gain on the straight than they have to lose when he's running behind his teammate through the corners here. But you can see, oh goodness me, and that's the number 70, well that's not the number 70, that's the number 77 car of what was John Lauzon, running a little bit wide, coming through at Filming Park, but keeping it pointed into Skyline. But that just goes to show you can push it a slight bit too far and the car will run wide, and fortunate there to keep it pointed a straight line, and that's credit to his driving. But he's backed off there, and Jerome Bajulas comes on through here, the driver of course in the Porsche 718 Cayman, and as he rolls his way out of forest, oh, it's a whack to the wall there for what was our McLaren driver behind. Well, that is an absolute disaster moment. He will definitely not be improving anymore. Will John Lauzon, and well, that's going to be a P10 start at this rate. But meanwhile, we look towards the head of this pack and we see right now Edwin Offray currently P5 overall, P5 in class as well. And as he rolls his way through the left into right here, the number 99 driver's got it all to do if he wants to be on that front step. We look to Jordan Butler coming across the line, and Butler, does he improve? He does, but he only improves his time. He doesn't improve his position. What about an Offray? Meanwhile, here's the case that Butler sets a 2:16.1. That's good enough for P3 right now. An Offray says no, a 2:16.0 is good enough for P3. Tanner Dibble, meanwhile, goes pole position with a 2:15.004. That's half a second faster than John Wilding's effort, and I do believe with that, in fact, they'll have one more lap. So it's the case they will get 3 flying laps, not 2, and we do apologise for the confusion there. But as Dibble makes his way up the hill, that circuit is definitely rubbering in more and more here. That lap time is being found left, right and centre. And Dibble right now with half a second, almost 6/10 of a second advantage. Has he got this in the bag? Surely he's got this in the bag with that much of an advantage. But then again, his teammate Wilding's not too far behind. But John Wilding has fallen backwards since that previous flying lap. He's actually fallen out of the toe. It looks like there's about a 2.5 second gap between the two of them now. And that could be costing him in terms of those straight line runs. Jordan Butler has gone to the pits. It is the case Butler will not be improving anymore from what we're to understand. But Jerome Bajulaz, after that aborted, well, not that aborted lap per se, but it was the case that lap was compromised to a degree by the mistake of what was John Lauzon coming down off the mountain. It is the case that now Bajulaz and Lauzon have both got it all to do here, and well, if they can deliver, it is going to be important to them, because right now it looks as though it's going to be a DNA Racing lockout on the front row in the pro class. And overall, as our focus lies with Jerome Bajulaz, he rolls his way through McPhillamy, and we are expecting the Porsche to do well over the mountain. It is going to be the handling car for the mountain section, but it may not be as strong down the straights, and that's where the weakness could lie, as we do see Bajulaz making his way out of the dipper and into the braking zone now for Forrest Elbon. As he rolls his way down the hill here, you can see it looks so silky smooth, the car, and indeed these very capable hands of number 9 driver as he heads on round. He's going to furiously work the brakes and the throttle to keep that rear planted to the ground. Of course, mid-engine rear-wheel drive, it is the case the cars with the centre mass located further back, with the engine being located further back, they do have a tendency to slide a lot more under braking, particularly when there's a direction change alongside the braking zone. And you can see behind there, John Lauzon was closing very rapidly, and now he's actually backed off, and Lauzon going very slowly here. Where is the case? I think he feels that he hasn't improved, and that is a disaster for Lauzon. P10 is the best he will achieve. Meanwhile, Edwin Offray comes to the timeline here. Tanner Dibble has gone to the pits, it should be pointed out, and as an Offray comes across that timeline, does not improve. What about John Wilding? He does not improve either. Jerome Bajulaz, meanwhile, parking up and says that's it. Well, that is qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen, and it is Tanner Dibble who takes pole position in the end in superb form, as that looks like that's John Wilding who has put it into the wall there at turn number 1. Well, he's gone straight on now. I think he might have locked up the brakes a bit, but it is Tanner Dibble on pole ahead of John Wilding on the front row. It's a DNA Racing lockout, and then Edwin Offray and Jordan Butler straight behind. Meanwhile, in the AM class, it is Justin Braggon who has taken pole position, and he will start P6 ahead of Stefan Chalafou and Fernando Takahashi, who line up on the row behind him. But now we wait for the transition over to the race. But definitely quite the qualifying session, and in the end, Dibble taking pole by over 5.5 tenths. I think it's Tanner Dibble's. If he can deploy that pace in the race, it's his to lose in terms of the pro class. And Justin Braggon as well, out qualifying his peers by a whole second. I think we may have some runaway leaders in both classes here today. But of course, qualifying is one aspect. It's not the entire story, as we do see Fernando Takahashi here just parked up right now, and indeed waiting as we all are for that switch over, which should come within the next minute or so. As we do wait and take a quick sip of water there, it is the case, of course, at the wonderful Australian circuit here. A lot to watch out for in the race, and particularly the slipstream racing that we're going to see both uphill and downhill. And therefore, if our drivers can stay close to one another in the run over the mountain, expect there to be a lot of side-by-side battling in the run down Conrod into the Chase chicane. But how will that all play out? And we're about to find out as we transition over to the race, and let's take you through the grid. So it is the case for round number 7 of the GT4 Championship 2022, as brought to you by Middle of the Pack Racing League on iRacing. Tanner Dibble takes pole position in the end by over half a second versus John Wilding. The DNA Racing drivers locking out the front row, with Jordan Butler starting in P3 for DNA Racing, and then joining him on that second row, Edwin Offray for Ascension Racing in a good qualifying session for Butler, less so for an Offray, but then again, he may have just been backing it off to avoid putting it in the wall. Jerome Virgilio starts off our third row for Blue Flag Motorsports alongside our AM pole sitter of Justin Braggan from Middle of the Pack Racing. A great lap by Justin Braggan, and then Fernando Takahashi and Stefan Chalafu, the two AM drivers, make up row number 4. Behind them on row number 5, Jermaine Warren starts P9 for Middle of the Pack Racing, joined by John Lauzon for Blue Flag Motorsports in an uncharacteristic P10, it has to be said. Starting well down towards the bottom of the order is the pro driver, and then we have the AM debutant of what is Glenn Bratton starting P11. The privateer has got a lot to do here today, starting from the back of the field. But as our drivers are now set to go, it is the case that any moment now the safety car will take our drivers away from the entry into the chase chicane, and well, we will have that manual double file rolling start, which will have Tanner Dibble, who you see there always the right of your picture at the very front. He will be the one to lead our drivers away for 20 minutes of racing. But as we do, I look to the blimp camera here, of course, our pack of 11 drivers gradually making their way on down, and as they do through the chicane, they'll let the safety car go because it is quite a short formation lap here, and therefore there won't be too much time to get temperature into the tyres. Do keep in mind, of course, these GT4s don't have tyre blankets, they don't have tyre warmers. The tyres are put on the cars, and then it is the case they're ready to go, and therefore our drivers will have to deal with cold tyres on that opening lap in particular, and could that lead to some upsets? Well, we will wait and see, as we now do wait to see Tanner Dibble take us away to the green. And it's lights out, away we go here for round number 7 of the GT4 Championship, and Tanner Dibble gets a good start there ahead of John Wilding, who stays alongside but on the outside. Meanwhile, Jordan Butler under pressure, he gets a bit of a slower start, but Edwin Offray runs slightly wide there coming out of the opening corner. That's costing some time. Further back we can see Fernando Takahashi also getting into the mix as they make their way up the hill towards Griffith Bend, and this is where we'll see our initial slipstream battles. Takahashi going side by side with Justin Braggan, who goes early on the defence to the inside here. He knows it's coming to Braggan, and therefore he's going to close off Takahashi whilst he can. Behind them, Stefan Chalafu trying to keep John Lauzon at bay. Lauzon's already gained a place on Jermaine Warren as they roll their way through Griffiths Bend, but it's the case that Lauzon goes a bit deep there, and as they make their way up towards the cutting, all of our drivers come on through, and Tanner Dibble leads our drivers into the cutting for the first time of asking. They all settle down into single file formation now. 9, it's the case side by side from this point onwards. It's very risky, and as they make their way up the hill even further towards the peak, it is the case that Justin Braggan here, having had a good start, he's still got Takahashi close behind. Can he hold him at bay? That will be the question as they roll the way down through turn number 9 and up towards Philippi Park at 10. Nobody makes contact with the wall so far. Almost a contact with the wall for Jerome Virgilio as they head through Philippi and now into Skyline, and this is where the whole attitude of the circuit changes. Now they go downhill, and it's about who's brave on the brakes for the first time. 9 cold tyres and cold brakes will cause the car to be a little bit unsteady. Well, they all coming down. I think we've got one. Oh, goodness me, we've got a driver pointing the wrong way there, and that is Fernando Takahashi involved in contact with Stefan Chalafu by looks of things. Now, whether Takahashi got it wrong and Chalafu then followed suit, or whether it's the case they came together, we don't know. But what we do know is Glenn Bratton has gained a place over Takahashi as a result of that, and Fernando Takahashi has got to get the car turned, but of course he's stuck between the two walls there, much like the Evergreen shipping ship at the time. I can't think of the actual name of the ship, but the cargo ship, there's the word, and it is the case he's going to spend quite a bit of time turning the car around. But as they make the way down towards turn number 21 at the moment into the chase chicane, Tanner Dibble leads here ahead of John Wilding, followed by Jerome Virgilio as they've broken away, have the top 2, and Justin Braggan here with everything that's gone on in the pro class, he's moved up to P4 and he's ahead of Edwin Offray as well, as meanwhile it's the case we've got Jordan Butler off circuit, we've also got John Lauzon, both of them taking the rallycross line there, coming out of the chicane. I'm not exactly sure what's happened between them, but definitely there's been something that's gone wrong for the pair of them, and it looks as though Jordan Butler has got a problem with the car. I'm wondering if there's a puncture or some major suspension damage, because that McLaren is not happy, and I think the two of them may actually come together given the fact they both went off, i.e. Butler and Lauzon, but we can only guess as we didn't see the exact contact. But with Butler making his way into the pits after one lap, it is Tanner Dibble who leads ahead of John Wilding. by only 2.5 tenths of a second as they make the way into Griffith Bend, followed by Jerome Bajula's in P3. Then we have Edwin Offred in P4, followed by the leader of the AM class, Justin Bragg, P5. And then we have Jermaine Warren in P6 here, being pursued by John Lauzon P7. And then it's Stefan Chalafu behind in P8 as the field has spread out to a degree now, with Glenn Bratton in P9, just keeping it slow, steady and smart here as the privateer on his debut. And then Fernando Takahashi and Jordan Butler in P10 and P11 respectively. Butler having to make that visit to the pits. But we do look here from Bratton to our race leader and ride on board from the rear of Tanner Dibble's car here. And we ride on board what is the exhaust area as he makes his way up through turn number 10 and over into Skyline. And you can definitely see how Wilding is keeping his teammate honest here. And I think right now some team orders may be in effect in terms they won't want to have a go at each other too much. They want to open up that gap. They've already got a 2.2 second advantage to Jerome Bajulas, but once that gap opens up enough and we get deeper into this race, it is the case we could expect the gloves to come off between the two teammates, given the fact of, oh goodness me, and Wilding with a hit to the wall there, coming out of Forest Elbow, getting a bit too greedy with the throttle pedal, and that is going to severely cost him time down the straight. And could that be some suspension damage on the front right? We'll have to see as they make the way on down behind them. It is the case, Jerome Bajulas doesn't need any more invitation to try and close up a bit more, but he does have to keep in mind, of course, on these straights, he does lose out in that Porsche compared to his peers. It is the case that he does have a high top speed, but the acceleration compared to his rivals is lacking, and that, of course, is the balance of performance between these GT4 class cars. It is the case that Bajulas in the Porsche has the best handling, but he doesn't have the acceleration and the straight line build compared to his rivals. He's got to try and keep the speed in the corners, but meanwhile trying to keep ahead, it is Edwin Offred here, the pro driver, under pressure from Justin Bragg, who chases after him as they make the way down towards turn number 1 and onto lap number 3. And as they make the way into the braking zone here, the Ascension Racing driver, I think he'll be trying to stay with Bajulas here, and he won't want Justin Bragg to find a way on pass. But we ride on board here with Justin Bragg as he makes his way up the hill towards turn number 2. And right now, the middle of the pack racing driver, well, I think he'd love to take a swipe at that P4 and try to get an overall position in the Ferris Plus way as we're hitting. Stefan Chalafu is into the pit lane, so something wrong with Chalafu's car as well. May have been a waxable alternatively in those incidents on the opening lap. Could that damage be stacking up now? Well, it's the case he has come on in, and that may see him drop down the order. Oh, goodness me! And that is a major knock to the wall, and Edwin Offred there with a disastrous amount of jump to the pits, and the car just went. And as it did, Justin Bragg there was some contact, but it is the case that Bragg has managed to go through. But how much is that damage going to affect his race? Indeed, it's drama at Bathurst, and that is another driver who's had to make the way to the pit lane. Edwin Offred, of course, will be demoted an entire lap, given the fact he's had to jump to the pits, and that will see him drop all the way to P11. But now we do a look here. It's all about survival as the race enters its 7th minute. We've still got 14 minutes to go, plus the final lap, so we're by no means towards the finish right now in this sprint race. But indeed, I think it's less of a sprint and more of a race about survival right now. With the rate of attrition we have seen, already 3 drivers having to make pit stops, and we can expect plenty of other drivers out there to potentially be worrying about the fear factor of making contact with the walls. We see Jermaine Warren there sliding his way down into Forest Elbow behind. There's John Lauzon, and Lauzon, of course, finding himself all out of sorts after was a very difficult qualifying session, and now he's got it all to do. But meanwhile, Chalafu has found his way past Glenn Bratton, going through McPhillamy Park, and Bratton here under pressure from Jordan Butler as they make the way on down, and Butler's going to try and take a peek. But here's the thing, if you're a pursuing driver, you have to show respect down through the mountain. Indeed, Bratton going a bit deep there as he made his way through the dip, and in fact backing off, I think, and letting Butler go rather than trying to stay there. I think he recognises that he's a bit slow by comparison with Butler, and therefore he just wants to try and bring the car home. And to be fair, maybe learn the circuit. He is one of our new AM drivers, but that's the thing. We're middle of the pack racing league. We do cater for everyone as best as we possibly can in the series we run, whether you are brand new to iRacing or an experienced veteran. And indeed, Glenn Bratton here gradually finding his feet as he makes his way over the crest and down towards the chase chicane. But as he does, we're hitting Edwin Offred still in the pit lane, still being repaired after that tow. That's very unfortunate, but we look from the back of our field to the front of our field, and Tanner Dibble right now, after leading this race on the opening lap and keeping that John Wilding at bay, he's now breaking away, and Wilding, with that whack to the wall at Forest Elbow only a couple of laps ago, I do wonder whether the number 26 drivers decide to back it off early. Well, as he makes his way through turn number 4. It is the case we've got some personal best coming in. Fernando Takahashi's just set a personal best, as has Jordan Butler. They're further down there in P7 and P9 overall respectively, but we do look from Wilding here to Jerome Bajulas, and on that last lap our leaders, to give you an idea of how quickly Dibble and Wilding are lapping. They're lapping in the 2:15s. Bajulas is lapping in the 2:17s to 2:16s. It is the case that Dibble and Wilding are just in a class of their own, as I believe we've had Glenn Bratton have an off track. Oh, goodness me, and I think Bratton there has had a spin at turn number 1, and it is the case he's now got to get the car pointed the right way, and as he makes his way back up to speed, where it is easy to dip a wheel beyond the exit curb of turn 1 and to send the car flying. I can attest to it. I've done that a number of times myself, racing around Bathurst on the simulator, and therefore Bratton just simply finding that the width of the circuit has come back to haunt him. But meanwhile, Edwin Offred has left the pit lane, and Offred right now really has got a lot of work to do. His first title will be Bratton in terms of gaining an overall position, and in terms of gaining a position in class, it is Jordan Butler. But how far up the road is Jordan Butler, I hear you ask? He is 35 seconds or so up the road. Edwin Offred's got it all to do, and this could really change the complexion of the Pro Overall Championship going into round number 8 if things finish as they are, given that Onofre right now in that P2 position, he's going to lose a lot of points to John Lauzon, who, as we look to the Blue Flag Motorsports driver here, where in case qualifying didn't go his way, but the race is going his way so far, and I think he will take that P6 with open arms as he rolls his way on around through the chase. But of course for him, the problem is that if Dibble and Wilding continue to accrue points like they are since Daytona, then that could be a bit of a spanner in the works, allows on the championship hopes come the final rounds. If it is the case, this run of form between the drivers continues to Spa-Francorchamps and then to the Nürburgring Nordschleife in the season finale. So John Lauzon can't become complacent here. He can't relax too much. But as he makes his way through turn number 1 and now up the hill, we do look to Jordan Butler here, and I believe Jordan Butler closing up to the back of Chalafu. I think Chalafu had a bit of an off track at what was the chase chicane, and indeed Jordan Butler getting close as they make their way into the final corner. But as they roll the way on through, it is the case the DNA Racing driver closing up very aggressively. He'll be looking for that P8 overall. It won't change his class position, only his overall position. Will Chalafu make it easy? That's the question. Or will he try and keep his rival at bay? There's Fernando Takahashi. You can see at the top of the camera very briefly, P7 is not too far away, and Chalafu's target is Takahashi. And I think if I was in Chalafu's shoes right now, if it is the case that Butler puts on plenty of pressure, I'd let Butler go, look to stay with him over the mountain, and use his toe to pull me closer to Takahashi, who is 5.5 seconds up the road as things currently stand. But of course, it's Chalafu's decision, and he'll be the one who determines the way this race goes. As meanwhile, oh goodness me, and well, it's the case that Justin Braggan and Jerome Bajulas have both been involved in an instant skyline, and Bajulas there with a crumpled front suspension and a wheel that has come off, and Justin Braggan, well, he is in the absolute wars. It has to be said, the middle of the pack racing driver. And I think he's seen his life flash before his eyes twice now. The fact that he avoided just about with a bit of a shunt that contact with Edwin Offred, and he's definitely been involved in a moment with what was there Jerome Bajulas, albeit I don't think he made the contact initially based on the way the cars were purchased, although I could be wrong on that. I think Bajulas may have got it wrong coming out of McPhillamy, and then Justin Braggan's had to try and take evasive action. But definitely to be leading the AM class, well, Justin Braggan has seen it all, and now he's got Jermaine Warren, his teammate from the middle of the pack racing, closing up on him. And I think Jermaine Warren at this point may be thinking, can I potentially have that chance of winning the AM class today, Justin? It is the case as they make the way on through here. Really, Braggan has been the one to outshine his teammate, but don't count Jermaine Warren out, a fast driver in his own right. And as they make the way down towards the final corner here into Murray's Corner, it is one of those cases where Jermaine Warren now will salivate at the prospect of potentially bringing home a win here in Australia. But as they cross the timeline, they go on to another lap. They've got 8 minutes to go plus the final lap, and you can see a bit further back there John Lauzon closing on up gradually, as meanwhile Jermaine Warren here really trying to put that pressure on his teammates as they make their way up the hill. But as they go charging on up here, these two cars, of course, both being powered by a Mercedes V8 engine. For those who don't know about the Aston Martin Racing V8 Vantage GT4, it is the case as a Mercedes engine under the hood, as powered with a turbo, rather than it being an Aston Martin engine itself. And indeed, it is a very similar engine to what's in the front of that Mercedes in front. And therefore, it is the case Mercedes on Mercedes action in terms of power plant. But of course, the Aston Martin Vantage V8, a bit more of a nimble car by comparison with the Mercedes, albeit, of course, the balance of performance would dictate the Mercedes is a bit more of a straight line car, particularly in the higher gears, whereas the Aston Martin does match it for initial acceleration in the lower to medium gears, and therefore that does lead to an interesting situation for Jermaine Warren, which is If he wants to make the pass in the straights, he's got to be within this distance coming over the mountain. Indeed, out for his elbow, he'll aim to be within 6/10, if not half a second, in order to go for that move as he lifts off there and lets the car roll its way into McPhillamy Park. And you can see how Bratton just taking a little bit more speed into the corner and a bit more width on exit as they roll the way through Skyline and now down into the dipper. The body language of the cars is also telling Bratton just able to carry that speed down and around. Meanwhile, it's the case that Jermaine Warren, by comparison, just a little bit more hesitant. I think expecting that Aston Martin may kick loose, but as they make the way out of the corner, again, you can see it in the fact that Bratton getting the better exit initially, but then Warren getting a tighter exit and therefore able to get on the power much more comfortably. And now in the draft, as they head up the crest, over towards what is the run down Conrod and into the chase, Warren is going to close, and as he continues to build here, heading up into top gear, heading up to the highest possible speed, he gets ready, but no, he lifts off there. I think he feels he's not too close. Alternatively, there's no point fighting right now. Save it for the final lap as they make their way through the chicane. What for them is the 6th time of asking. But as they head on down, it is the case that we look from them to a bit further back, and Chalafu in particular here, who running in that P8 position, overall P4 in the class. He's let Jordan Butler go. I think Jordan Butler found his way on through, and now Butler going after Takahashi, but there's a sizable gap. Hold up a second, and we've seen a swap of positions here in the middle of the pack racing, and I think that was Justin Bratton just making his way back behind his team. I think he's lifted off in the start-finish straight. I think he respects the fact that the damage he's picked up has cost him some pace, and therefore he's going to work with his teammate, but we'll have to wait and see as Bratton there peels the inside. He's definitely peeling in there to bleed some of the speed off the car and make sure he doesn't benefit from the tow on his teammate. It's a bit of teamwork going on here, and Jermaine Warren right now finds himself leading the AM class with his teammate right behind to support him. And indeed, if that is not a photo opportunity for middle of the pack racing, I don't know what is, as the two cars make their way through into the cutting as they head into that very tricky braking zone. And as they roll the way on through, it is the case Jermaine Warren will now look to keep his teammate behind him as they roll the way up the hill even further. We look from them to Fernando Takahashi in the meantime, and Takahashi on that last lap a 2:17.78. Meanwhile, behind him, Jordan Butler a 2:16.52, gaining 1.2 seconds on Takahashi is Butler a lap, it would seem. And as they make the way into the cutting this time, I think Takahashi may be worried about what is to come from behind. But of course, the thing that he can use to reassure himself is the fact that Butler is in a different class, and therefore, if Takahashi finishes behind Jordan Butler, it won't cost him any points in the AM Championship. Of course, Takahashi will be aware of the fact that Chalafu is only 2.5 seconds off of Butler, so if they do end up squabbling, and it is the case Takahashi loses significant time in that trade of places, then he'll find himself battling for P3 in the AM class with Chalafu in the very late stage of this race. We are almost at the 16-minute mark, and that means that come the end of this lap, we are likely to have 2 more laps, and indeed our leaders are already making their way down towards the final corner. That shows you how far up the road Dibble and Welding are. Indeed, the DNA Racing drives absolutely flying around here, and we do cut to them now as they make the way onto what is for them the penultimate lap as they cross that timeline. 4 minutes left, and we're a lap time of over 2 minutes. 2 more laps to go as they head into Hell's Bend, and as they head through the left-hander, it is the case that Tanner Dibble right now feeling very comfortable and definitely showing John and Wilding that it's not just qualifying. He's here to win in the race as well, and I think John Wilding would not be anything but proud of seeing his teammate fly, or be a bit enviable perhaps of the pace that Dibble has brought to the table today. And as they make their way up into turn number 2 into Griffith Bend here, it's looking to be a DNA Racing 1-2. Albeit, of course, let's not let the commentators strike it down. We've still got some time to go, and we'll have to wait and see if that is how the story concludes. But meanwhile, speaking of the stories that are building up, we can see Fernando Takahashi is still being closed by Jordan Butler behind, and Stefan Chalafu is not too far behind either, although I say that, and Chalafu in fact on the latter portion of this lap, as we see Chalafu making his way across that timeline, really had a bad end to lap, and in fact lost a whole second on Takahashi. I think it is the case that Chalafu really struggling in the late stage of this race in the 219 car, and as a result, the McLaren 570S driver may just be thinking about bringing the car home as he heads up the hill. And as he charges on up here, I think Chalafu will be in that mindset. He wants to try and take that P3. Of course, it'd be vital to his championship aspirations and getting them off to a good start here in terms of their resumption for the endurances stage. but perhaps P4 is enough today as he makes his way up into Griffith Bend. But as he does, we'll take you through that field as the story makes its way to its conclusion here at what is Bathurst. And we see Tanner Dibble leading as he makes his way out for himself and just missing the wall by a hair's width, leading by 2.4 seconds ahead of his teammate John Wilding, both of them in the Pro class. And then we have our AM class leader of what is Jermaine Warren here from Middle of the Pack Racing, being followed closely by his teammate in the AM class, which is Justin Braggan here, and the two of them have swapped places. It's against the DNA Racing drivers leading, have run away with this. Meanwhile, the Middle of the Pack Racing drivers, well, they've swapped places, given that Justin Braggan was leading this race for some time in the AM class, was involved in a knock with Jerome Bajules coming down through Skyline or over the crest of Skyline. We're not exactly sure what's exactly happened, but we do know Justin Braggan is running a wounded car because of that incident, and also some contact with Edwin Offren much earlier on, and therefore he yielded the position to Jermaine Warren, who is gradually breaking away, and therefore Braggan acting as rear guard. And then in P5 we do have John Lauzon, our third place pro driver, who misses his braking point there and understeers beyond the chase chicane and rejoins after turn 22. And indeed a number of drivers have struggled with that today, but meanwhile Jordan Butler here in P6, he's just gained that P6 off Fernando Takahashi in P4 in the pro class here, and only gaining track position overall, not in terms of class position. And then we do see Fernando Takahashi P3 in the AM class, and really the best of the rest in the AMs as he makes his way through turn 21, through 22, and he just needs to bring it to its conclusion now. Stefan Chalafu in what is P8 here. And the privateer really struggling today at Bathurst, it would seem, in the race trim, and as he makes his way down towards the final corner, he'll be happy with that P4 in the AM class. And then we do have Jerome Bajules, of course, involved in that major crash up at Skyline. A Will coming off the car here to jump to the pits. He's P9, followed by Edwin Offred, who's in P10, chasing after him. But I think there's not enough time for an Offred to get the move done. And then we do have Glenn Bratton running last but not least in P11 on his debut in the AM class here as he makes his way down through the triple left header in towards McPhillamy Park. But as he heads on through, he's been lapped by P1, P2. But again, it's not about being lapped, it's about bringing the car home at the end of the day. Whether you're fast or slow, bring the car home and you get points on the board. And that's exactly what Glenn Bratton's doing here. But the racing has calmed down somewhat as our drivers head towards the late stages of this race. And we already see Tanner Dibble rolling his way through Forest Alba. Now one long straight remains between him and 3 more corners to wrap up this race. And meanwhile, Takahashi, well, I think he's going to be safe from Chalafu come the finish here, given the fact that Chalafu is still 8.5 seconds back and is not comfortably close, and he's still falling back, and Takahashi now just waiting to get the car to the checker flag. As he rolls his way on through, it is the case that we do look to Jermaine Warren here, and much like when we saw Dibble coming out for his elbow earlier, Jermaine Warren will now be looking to try and just simply stay ahead to the finish versus his teammate, but I think he won't have too much trouble there. But we do look to Tanner Dibble here as he makes his way into the final corner, and it's been a relatively straightforward race, but he won't complain, for it's the DNA Racing driver makes his way out of the final corner. It is Tanner Dibble who takes the win overall and in the pro class here at Bathurst, ahead of his teammate John Wilding. It's a DNA Racing 1-2 overall in the pro class, and then it will be as he heads to the final corner. It has been a long time since we've been able to say these words, but he heads to the checker flag, and as he does, it's Middle of the Pack Racing's Jermaine Warren who takes the win in the AM class here, P3 overall. He shakes it side to side in joy. Justin Bragg, his teammate, brings it home P4. It's an MOP 1-2 in the AM class, and then we will have what is John Lauzon coming across the line P5, completing the pro podium ahead of Jordan Butler. A difficult day for Lauzon in qualifying, but he made up for it in the race. And then we see here Jordan Butler heading on down to the final corner with Fernando Takahashi behind. Butler will come home P6 overall, P4 in the pro class, and Fernando Takahashi will complete the AM class podium with that P7. A solid drive there for Fernando Takahashi, no doubt about that. And then it will be Stefan Chalafu who heads the line here, him P8, P4 in the AM class, missing out on the podium, but not his circuit today. He'll look to bounce back at Spa, and then we have to wait a little bit of time for Jerome Bajules to head to the line along with Edwin Offred. But Bajules in the P9, Onofre P10, and Glenn Bratton coming home P11. But let's take you to those race results, ladies and gentlemen. And well, after the 20 minutes of racing in the sprint here today at Mount Panorama in round 7 of the Middle of the Pack Racing League GT4 Championship, it was Tanner Dibble who took the win in the end, 1.8 seconds clear of John Wilding, with then a sizable gap of what was in excess of almost 20 seconds to Jermaine Warren in P3. Our AM winner in the end, Jermaine Warren, a very happy day for middle of the pack racing as well. They're P3 and P4. Justin Bragg bringing home that 1-2 for middle of the pack racing in the AM class. John Laz on P5, Jordan Butler P6, and then Fernando Takahashi, Stefan Chalafu, Jerome Bajules, and Edwin Offray completing the top 10, and Glenn Bratton just outside the top 10 in P11. Well, my goodness, a great race here today at Mount Panorama, and definitely setting the tone for the rest of the endurance this stage, which is about surviving at the circuit. And indeed, that's what endurance racing is all about, outlasting the circuit and not getting it wrong. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now must say thank you very much for watching. And if you do want to know more about the Middle of the Pack Racing League community, then why not check us out as our official website addresses, and that's our Middle of the Pack Racing League Discord, the link available on screen. Alternatively, if you are a Twitter user, then why not go to twitter.com/MOP Racing to find out the latest details on the series we run and what we do. But for now, our drivers will be packing up their bags and getting ready to go racing once again for next time. It'll be in Belgium. We'll be heading to the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, a circuit that needs no introduction in terms of it playing as a venue to endurance racing. And will we see DNA Racing continue their run of form in the Pro Championship? And will we see Middle of the Pack Racing continue their run of form in the AM Championship? Well, regardless of whether that happens or not, there's going to be plenty of action that lies ahead as we head into the penultimate round of the championship. But thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen, and if you have enjoyed, be sure to let us know. We have been the Middle of the Pack Racing League, or the MPRL. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh. Be sure to join us on Sunday, the 31st of July 2022 for the next stage in the story. But until then, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.